Hello everyone, Red Phoenix aka Melms here on Finbol's Commune with our special guest, Mr. Nusret Sen, who is going to talk to us about his book Internet Ed, a Marxist Look into the Future with Computers.
Okay, so what we are dealing today is the effect of computers on society and on the class struggle as such. For this, I will provide a foundation as to how I approach the matter. Therefore, I will talk about the social life, which is made up of material life and ideological life. The material life is basically the economic foundation of the society, and ideological life is the ideas and institutions in political and cultural sphere. When we look at the material side of the society, social life, we see that it's basically production activity. And production has got two aspects. One is man's relation to nature, and two, man's relation to other men, which is the social aspect of it. Social aspect of production is totally based on the material aspect of production. That is the man's relationship with nature, which is the production technology. Whatever is one's production technology, so must man's relation to one another be. That's the mode of society. Productive forces are the positive side. That is the man's relation to nature. They continuously develop, while the relations of production, that's man's relation to each other during production process, is the negative side. As the productive forces develop, relations of production are destroyed and renewed with better and suitable production relations. If you leave aside the social side of the production process, you've got production as such, and it's got A, subjects of labor, B, means of labor, and C, work as such. Work as such is the everybody's ability, physical and mental ability, to use the means of labor to work on subject of labor so that they can produce. We all have this capacity, and that capacity develops as the means of labor, particularly the instruments of labor, develops. The end result of this process is a product, which is a use value. And as I said, we're not looking at the social side of this process, because if you look at the social side of the process, the end product is not just use value, but also a value, but we'll not consider that. So at the end of the process of production, we have an individual product, but since it is a social process, the product is a social product. In the social product, the instruments of labor, which are part of the means of labor, are the indicators of the society, social conditions, which society must assume. Therefore, as we shall see, with the industrial revolution, the first industrial revolution, the age of machinery, with that we come to capitalist form of society, which starts with the last quarter of the 18th century in England, and it starts with machinery. Machinery has got three parts to it. Motor mechanism, which provides the motive power, the power to make things work. Transmitting mechanism, which takes this power to the working machine, which is the third part, the working machine. Working machine is the one that uses the tools to work on the subject of labor. And it is the part where the industrial revolution begins, because working machine replaces the working man with his tools, because it's the working machine that now utilizes the tools. It works by taking the power from motor mechanism to the transmitting mechanism. It replaces the working man. With the machine production, you got two principles. It's called automation of production and continuity of production. As you can see, the working machine, the way it works on the subject of labor, it becomes automated. The worker is taking off the process of working on the subject of labor, which is the automatic principle. Continuity of production refers to the fact that when the work is being done on the subject of labor, you do one part of work on the subjective level, and then you have to transfer it to another machine to continue working on it till the end product. And the process of moving from one machine to another machine breaks the continuity, and making this activity more and more continuous is a process that is to be taken up all the time. And continuity of production during the first stage, during the third industrial revolution, is not as good as it is these days. We see that industry is developed during the industrial revolution, and together with that, inevitably transport and communication also developed, because transport and communication provides the environment for the industry to function. The machine production by its nature is social, because there is a central power, which is the steam engine that produces the power for the whole factory, and there is a mechanism, transmitting mechanism, that takes this power to the machines, and the machines are in the factory and they are organized. Everything is planned, and the worker's role there is to work to a plan, which is reflects the socialization of production in the factory. And also, as industry and transport and communication develops, different products are produced in different factories, and they are sort of dependent on one another. What one factory produces ends up being a raw material for another factory, and there is this socialization of production in the whole society. Under capitalism, the social nature of production in the factory is planned. There is no avoiding it, and they plan the production in the factory. But when it comes to society, they don't do so. Factories and enterprises are owned by individual capitalists, and therefore there is no interconnection amongst these different productive activities, although it's clear that they must be planned because they are all dependent on one another. If you don't have coal, you can't have steam, you can't have steam engine working for your factory. But that is not organized in that stage. But the demand for the fact that there must be a social organization is quite visible through the technology of production at that time. And as a result of this, we have the Paris Commune, which is an uprising of the proletarians to transform the means of production into communal property, so that the demand of the production technology to organize the production in society is also abided by. But as we know, the Paris Commune was not successful. And then we are passing into the second industrial revolution, the age of electricity. I'm sorry I have already taken up 10 minutes, but I will try to finish this part in 5 minutes. Then we can go to the questions and answers. The age of electricity starts with the last quarter of the 19th century, 1875 and all that stuff. With the research and development, Edison is quite world famous. This is electricity. And it finishes with the August 1953 session of the Supreme Soviet, when a different course was chartered for USSR, which led to its destruction. In this second industrial revolution era, the new developments are research and development becoming a separate branch of industry. Just as you got factories, now you got special research and development establishment that actually work on science and technology of production. The second development is the scientific management movement that it transforms management of production in the factories. Later on, as we shall see, through operations research, the very management of the production into different subject matter as well. These are the two main new things. And here I would like to bring your attention to the fact that scientific management movement, which is known as Taylorism, is very much rubbished by Trotskyism. That, of course, is a means of rubbishing communism, because if you do not follow the scientific developments, you cannot progress to communism. Then the changes in this era of second industrial revolution, the age of electricity, is that prime mover and transmitting mechanism, that is steam engine and all those cumbersome transmitting mechanism of motion from steam engine begins to change, whereby we have electricity transmitting mechanism becoming a matter of electric cables, which connects electricity to the factory. And we also have the simple fact that in the good old days, there was only one factory and one steam engine that used to provide power for each factory. But now we're in a position to have one electrical production facility providing electricity to more than one factory. And as we shall see in future with the Soviet Union, the whole thing becomes nationwide. In this era, the working machines further progress, automation is further progress thanks to the fact that electricity begins to be used through electrical motors, which provides ability to utilize all sorts of motions, which was very difficult to do with steam power and transmission mechanism that was used in those days. And also the continuity of production is also developed thanks to this fact of electricity and electrical motors. They have an effect on working machine, and the continuity and automation is developed through transfer lines, whereby detailed machines become part of something called transfer line, and things are moved from one machine to another relatively easily. And instead of detailed machine, you got these transfer lines which contains and different handling machine. You got these transfer lines that handles the products automated and continuous way. And assembly lines are just further progress of handling devices. They are basically handling devices that are used to automate the assembly of standardized products. And we also have progress in the raw materials and storing the end product and the transfer of these to the factory. And all that leads to concentration and centralization of production. And we have, instead of detailed machines in the factories, as it was in the good old days of first industrial revolution, we now have huge factories producing different parts in huge quantities, and these are all transferred from one factory to another, which together with electricity points to the social nature of production in the whole society, not just in the factory. Because of this development, we have on the one hand monopoly capitalism, which monopolizes this development of production facilities. And we have socialism, because in 1917, because of the fact that monopoly capitalism has concentrated production and led to socialization of production in a huge scale, we have the Russian workers assuming power in 1917 October Revolution and starting to build socialism. This era is development of monopoly capitalism and socialism at the same time. In the Soviet Union, we find the best example of how production progressed in this era, whereby each factory was planned perfectly, and also the interrelationship between different factories and agriculture as well was planned together with transportation. And electricity was beginning to be produced not just locally but also regionally and nationally, and transmitting lines were assuming national, international character thanks to socialism. In other words, the fact that production requires socialization, which is expressed by electrification, was brought to a conclusion by socialist productive facility. Okay, I shall leave it here. It's not been very good, but I suppose it provides a foundation for communists to have a look at the book itself.
Thank you, Mr. Shen.
Yep.
So going on to the questions, we have already one question from Leftcom Stalin, who is not a Leftcom.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Would you like to read out your question?
So my question was, why didn't you bring up the rate of profit in combination with the automation?
Rate of profit and?
In combination with the aspect of automation.
Well, if you look at the other parts of the thing, we take it up there. Computerization, we pick it up, is the computerization. Because if you notice, I'm trying to avoid social side of the process as much as I can at first. I'm just trying to show that even the technology of production is forcing socialization of production by itself. The very technology of production is social and requires social treatment. That's what I'm trying to impress upon the reader. That it's not just social side of it, which is progressed by economic studies, by communism, but it's the very technology of production is demanding that it should be treated socially.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we had other questions too.
Now, the computers, I am sure all the communists know even better than me, but the main thing about computers is that they are general means of control. If the computers are not at a stage that they are a means of control, universal control, they are not the computers we are talking about. Basically, transistors and microchips provide the computers, which are universal means of control. As such, they must be provided with information through sensor organs or keyboards and what have you, and they must process that information and come up with a command one way or another to the different machines. That's what we understand from computers as things stand. Therefore, the communication is the central part of a computer's process. Without communication, there is no computer. Computers are the central thing about computers are the fact that they are a means of communication. And as a means of communication, they are also a means of universal control. Once we have established that, then we can see that it can be used in research and development. And it's clear that since you're able to connect everybody to one another and to all the means of production, to all the means of research and development, to anything and everything on Earth, this fact provides the conditions for every single individual on Earth to become a part and parcel of doing research and development. So research and development, which is now an elite function, loses this elite quality of it. It becomes something for everyone. I mean, it should become an activity for everyone. And computers points to this fact. Research and development can be an activity for everyone. The same is scientific management movement. The scientific management movement established for us the conditions, for example, for robotics by studying the activities of man, man's movement in detail. Without such detailed study of man's movement, robotics would have been impossible. And of course, without the computers, it would also become impossible. But scientific management movement, with the computerization, leads to the fact that everyone can be directly engaged in management of production activities. Can be. It's not at the moment, but it's clear that every individual can become part of management of structure of this production process. In the era that we are now, after 1953, prime mover and transmitting mechanism, that is electrical power, has assumed gigantic proportions, as we know. And it can be produced, electricity can be produced by many different ways and means, and they can all be pulled together and distributed through a national and international network of electricity, which, as you know, points to the fact that the whole process is a social process. The whole production process is social, dependent on this electrical production, and not just national process, but also international activity of production is dependent on international electrical network, and therefore is a social process that must be controlled internationally. If you go back to the working machines, they have also been further developed. Automation and continuity has been merged into one through standardization and direct flow lines, and flexible manufacturing systems, which requires computerization. But through that, we have continuous process, which is automatically producing things. We already had example of this without computers in the Soviet Union in the form of a piston factory in 1949, but now it's everywhere. Through the computerization, working machines are fully automated and achieve continuity within the factory. And this continuity spreads from the working machine assembly lines straight to the storage as well. The raw materials are stored automatically. They are transferred to the factory floor automatically, pass on to the working machines, the flow lines or flexible manufacturing systems automatically. And the end product is also collected and stored in the storage automatically. This is in the factory. But this is also further taken to the social aspect, to the whole society, because continuity and distribution of these products is done also automatically. I mean, it's clear with the production and distribution of electricity, but also in other products. What are stored automatically in the storage of the factory is easily taken out automatically and distributed to other factories or to the supermarkets automatically. It can be done. And it is done, for example, with petrochemical industries for electricity. And there are other places where it is done. And the latest version is the Shanghai. In Shanghai, they just built a fully automated ship storage, where the ships come and load and unload automatically. Therefore, the concentration of production is taken out of even the national boundaries, becomes an international affair, and planning of national and international production process becomes a requisite, and it's easily visible through the production technology that is being utilized at presently. Which brings us to the choice of monopoly capitalism and communism. We either pass to communism, and for this we turn all these productive capacities into communal property of man, of the society, and thereby we can control all our productive activities consciously from one center, and therefore use all those all that power of the machines perfectly, as in a fashion that fits their requirements. Or if we don't do it, we are going into barbarity, as we are. That's where we are. Okay, that's me finished for the time being.
Thank you, Mr. Shen. Do we have any questions for this part or so far? Lefkom Stalin? Have you collected any questions?
Not for this chapter yet.
Okay, well, I see Cigar is typing a question.
Okay.
Cigar, would you like to go ahead and ask it in voice chat?
Okay. Will mental labor also be automatized? I mean, is it possible for mental labor to get automated?
Well, it depends on the mental labor. I mean, as you know, every form of labor, including manual labor, requires mental powers. Without that, we couldn't do it. But if you're speaking specifically of research and development and things like that, yes, of course, some of it will be automated. But at the end of the day, we have to write the programs. We have to utilize these machines for our purposes. Therefore, there will be sections where we shall have more and more time to develop our mental capacity, our ability to think and understand nature in more depth and detail, and therefore use the nature to produce in more and more detail. I mean, there will always be work to be done by man. It will be mainly more and more mental labor, but there will always be physical labor as well, which will be combined in each individual. But there is no end to it. There is no end to it.
Thank you, Mr. Shen. Are there any other questions at this point in time? Seeing none, let's continue to the next part.
Now, we have seen the fact that the productive capacity of society requires that everything is interconnected and everything is connected to one another, and therefore socially controlled. If you do things whereby you do not connect those things to one another but separate them, you're going against their nature. You're asking for trouble, so to speak. And that's what we see in electricity, for example. In England, they have actually got rid of the state monopoly of production and distribution of electricity. They have divided production to different companies. There are lots of different companies who produce electricity now in England and UK. And they also divided the distribution of electricity. The network is divided amongst different companies, and it's even much more divided when it is reaching your house. There are many companies who try to sell you electricity, which is bought by them from this through this setup. But the way they've been able to do this was thanks to computers, because only thanks to computers were they able to sort of see who's producing how much, who's putting into the network how much electricity, and who's taking how much electricity out of that network. So they could divide this process amongst different. As you can see, this is totally against the nature of the production process, and it doesn't make sense. But capitalism requires this. They did not want. The only way they could go forward, that was under Mrs. Thatcher, was by dividing the production process. They've done this everywhere, in the railways, in mining, everywhere. They have taken steps like this. But with electricity, that's what they did, which is contrary against the nature of the technology, and therefore it is reactionary. With the working machines, you have similar problems. Working machines require standardization. You have to standardize everything. If you do so, you can produce lots of things in a flow line, quickly, easily, in an automatic and continuous fashion. But standardization is a problem. Everybody wants to push their own standards on everybody else. For example, in the video sector, when this book was written, there was 2 different standards, and one of them became dominant. The other one was lost, although apparently it was the better version. With the computerization as well, there was the Apple and Microsoft version fighting one another, and they come in their different ways. What they do is they close the mines in England where very good machines were being used, and they start buying coal from Colombia, where it is produced by child labor. Things like that. Therefore, we can see that under capitalism, the way the working machines, factories are used, in the industry, the labor of man is used is totally contrary. It's not reasonable. It's totally unreasonable. Transportation of things and people is the same. In 1950s, in England, we had railway line reaching every village. And what did they do? They destroyed all these railway lines. They are vandals. They have vandalized all those railway lines, started building roads and cars. With the railways, no one died. As you know, it was much more efficient for transportation of goods and people. You could transport lots of loads with just few people, even with steam machines being used to transport. Even with those, it was much more productive. But they got rid of it, and now we've got these cars poisoning us, and at least 3,000 or 4,000 people are dying in accidents every year, and at least 10,000 people are gaining lung problems due to the exhaust, and environment is being destroyed as well. But that's how they do, because they don't want communal things. They want to have a transportation which is individual. This way they are going, instead of progressing, increasing productivity and going along with the technology of production, they are going against it. It's totally unreasonable what they are doing. Research and development, scientific management is the same. We can connect everybody to these research and development places. We can provide people lots of time to spend time on studying things. Do they do that? No, they don't. When Al Gore is complaining about the fact that all the information has been collected through the satellites, well, I mean, make it available to everybody. Even today, if you look at the computers, even with all the restrictions, you cannot access all the good data. You have to pay lots of money to access data in certain libraries. So research and development, although Mr. Al Gore may complain, well, they're doing, not doing what the technology requires. If they did what the technology requires, we could all join each other and all the research and development stations and the factories and what have you, and work on development of production, but we can't do it because they will not let us do it. Planning is the same. Since all this interconnection of product facilities requires that planning is taken out of the factory and taken to the whole society, and indeed to whole international society. And it's so clear that we must do it. But are they doing it? No, they are not doing it. And they still blame the fact that the Soviet Union has collapsed because they tried to plan things, and they reckon it cannot be done. But who is Pentagon? Pentagon is planning military operations all over the world. There is no place where the Pentagon is not, and they are collecting data and they are planning. For what? To make war, which requires all sorts of secrecy, which requires all sorts of deviation, and totally contrary to human nature and to what we need. But planning of production, it goes along with the requirements of technology and it can be done. And yet they reckon it cannot be done, but it can be done, it must be done. And one other point, we must refer to the fact that governance of man by man is coming to an end. And the end form of this is once we communalize everything and plan all the production nationally and internationally, we can also have control of and intervention of every individual in these processes, and therefore we can have what is called push-button democracy, which is direct democracy. It is the last form of democracy, last form of governance of man by man, and computers make that possible too. But are they going to do it? No. If you look at the Mother of Parliament in the UK, you will see that they have produced a pamphlet that declares that direct democracy using computers is not doable. Well, it is. Therefore, everything they do is unreasonable. And as Hegel once said, what is unreasonable may exist, but it is not real. Therefore, must disappear. What is reasonable must come to be. Even though it doesn't exist now, it is the real thing, and therefore communism is the real thing. It will come to exist. While what exists today, monopoly capitalism, because it is not reasonable, will disappear. Why this unreasonable thing carries on today? Because the society, the monopoly capitalist society, relies on not reasonableness, or not abiding by the requirements of technology and therefore requirements of human society, but it requires maximum profit. And everything they do when they close down mines that use the latest machinery and start buying coal produced by child labor, it's profitable. That's why they do it. When they spend $700 billion to make on their war machinery, it's not reasonable, but it's profitable. That's why they do it. When they make war all over the world, it's profitable for them. And in fact, it is the only way to keep in power under these conditions. That's why they do it. The way the computers work and the way the computers make the whole process of production and other aspects of social life, including politics, automated, means that there is a choice between monopoly capitalism and communism, and the choices between barbarism and humanity. In other words, we really do not have a choice here. We must go for communism. We must transfer things to common property of all men and establish communist society. In the meantime, with the computers in the hands of these gentlemen, they will make war, they will increase unemployment and starvation. So the sooner we put an end to it, the better it is. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shen.
Yep.
Our following question comes from Fractal Sniper. Fractal Sniper, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Something caught my ears during your talk, which was very good, by the way. You mentioned good data and people not having access to that. I was wondering if you could elaborate on what good data actually is.
I don't know if I said good data, but lots of data. Al Gore, for example, was talking about the fact that satellites at the moment are collecting all that information about the universe, and it's been accumulated in their storage, and yet there is enough people to go through that data, and therefore they are not able to process all that information that's been collected, and they have still not processed that data. That's what I was talking about. Otherwise, of course, I mean, when the military collects data from all around the world to make war, that's bad data, if you like. When we collect data about production facilities, how we can automate it, that's good data. If you like, we can look at it that way.
Okay.
So in the sense of good and evil, essentially, from what I understood.
There's always good and evil under capitalism. We can't get rid of it, I'm afraid. But we must decide what is good and what is evil. This gentleman cannot do so, as you know.
Okay, thank you.
So then we go to Comrade Leftcom Stalin, whose question is next.
I've got two questions as well. So
Yeah, okay. We have one question from. Oh wait, was it my job? Because my question was thoughts on the Great Firewall from I'm Living in the Rain.
oh, I was going to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just couldn't get that question.
Your thoughts on the Great Firewall.
Great Firewall. You mean the firewall for stop people accessing computers?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The one in China, you mean?
Yeah, I think that's the Great Firewall.
That's what I was thinking he meant.
Yeah, and the Saudis have got one as well. Well, I'm afraid that's what in future we may end up having to do ourselves. It depends where we are with it. But Great Firewall of China at the moment is not good for us. But in future we may need it for security purposes. We may have to have our own internet so that this gentleman cannot access and do all sorts of
Why not have a system like Russia, which has its own internet in case they're cut off from the rest of the internet?
Yep. So something like that.
That's completely different to the Chinese version, which completely restricts their citizens from the entire internet. It's a different thing entirely, but.
I thought the basic idea was to stop, if they want to stop other people accessing from outside China, they can do so. Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that's what may be necessary in future. That's my understanding of it. But communists who really know how this network works should really help us with that. But from what I understand, there must be an ability to stop these gentlemen interfering, because they can easily access the network and go to the electrical power stations and block them. Some of these are nuclear, as you know. If they stop a nuclear power station,
I don't think nuclear power stations are connected to the internet in general, but
they are not.
Some of them are, in Europe especially.
And
not
they
here in the States.
with the Internet of Things growing, like everything and anything can be connected to the internet.
They use old hardware for nuclear stations just because of the fact that it can't connect.
Well, it depends on the nuclear power station, and also you need systems for controlling the nuclear power station. like to make sure that that you keep a stable amount of power in the power grid, because as you know, electricity needs to be matched 1-to-1 with demand. You can't store it, so there needs to be a system of communication, and that system usually is the internet to control power.
Well, correction, you can't store it efficiently.
Well, they might.
Way of
Sorry, I
keeping the
lost connection
internet
for a moment.
worldwide, but stopping this gentleman accessing things. I don't know.
Yes, and I just heard, sorry, but I just heard somebody say that that electricity cannot be stored. Of course, electricity can be stored. Like, for example, if it's like batteries do exist, and
Yes, I'm not saying that, but electric generation has to be matched 1-to-1 with demand basically all the time. At least in like big power grids. Like for instance, you got a while ago the European clocks that were running a little too slow because Kosovo was using too much power, or something like that in Europe.
In Germany.
Okay.
I can ask the next one.
Please do.
All right. When you brought again another from Living, when you brought up wars as a way to solve crises, did you have any country in mind writing that part?
America relies on making wars. England is the second other power that relies on wars. They use
That's what I
wars.
thought. Yeah, that's what I was thinking you said.
Yeah, I mean, there is almost no country that doesn't want to do it, like tries to do it. But America certainly has the power because everybody has been feeding them for the last 70 years, so that they could build this huge military power.
Oh,
It's the elite that
correction.
influence America to go to war,
Correction. When he
not
asked
the other
that
way.
question, he meant and I'll let you finish in a minute, Sniper. He meant what countries were victims of that method, not perpetrators.
Well, Iraq, at the moment, Iran is in huge danger. Syria, Libya, I mean, all over the world. There's almost no country because they got their bases almost everywhere. And once they have their bases, that means they are in contact with people who are amicable to them, which means they are not very amicable to their own nations and to their countries, which means they are making wars upon people everywhere. In Brazil, I mean, there is war machinery that uses machine guns and what have you, but there's also assassinations and what have you, which goes on all the time. Brazil, Colombia is full of such activities, whereby what they call these gentlemen who illegally go and kill people. It's all over the place. There is no country they are not making war against at the moment.
Mercenaries? You're talking about mercenaries?
Mercenaries, yeah.
You know that 80% of the fighting in Syria and Afghanistan is done by contractors?
Yes. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but yes.
Oh, yeah.
So we have another question coming from Chankaya. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that name correctly. What were the material causes for revisionism in the Soviet Union? I think we can keep this one until the end. Leskom Stalin, can you note it down?
I can write it down too.
Great. Any other questions that is specific to what we have talked about so far?
Yes.
All the questions like revisionism we can talk about later. Yes, Crasher?
Yeah. Another one from I'm Living in the Rain. Do you think there will be any need for elected heads under the push button democracy?
I think in this process there will be, but towards the end of it, there won't be. In the sense that as a government, there won't be. But in the society, even if you look at the Native Americans or the primitive communist societies, where there is communal activity, there's always a hierarchy. So there will always be a hierarchy. There will be people respected for their knowledge, for their abilities, and they will be at the top because of the respect they have. And there will be such an hierarchy in the society. because there will be more of this hierarchy, but everybody in the hierarchy will be respected. And so long as they can carry on this respect, they will be there. But as a government whereby the people govern other people through political means, that will disappear as this push-button democracy develops. But right at the start, I am sure there will be need for tutelar heads whose job it will be to get rid of themselves as soon as possible.
Great. Any other questions? In seeing none, we will.
Let me send you something, Melms, because I'm not sure if it has to do with the topic at hand yet, or if I should say it for general.
Let's move on for now, unless if
Okay.
another question arises. I see a few people.
Okay, I can do that for you, Chana.
Okay, let's move on to the next part for now. Sorry. Yes, the hero has a question. Would you like to ask it here, like by yourself, or should we ask it for you, the hero?
I think let me ask a similar question as well. I'll write it down for him. Okay. What would would it be possible for a communist internet source to challenge the capitalist internet? It's a very interesting question.
It is very interesting, but I really have no answer for you. I really don't have an answer for you. But as communism establishes itself and begins to use computerization in all its activities, including planning and what have you, I am sure that could be possible because we would be able to provide it as good as free of charge to everybody and not put any restrictions on them. So we would be in a position to do that, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Shen, the floor is yours again.
Okay. Now that we know that especially with the computerization, electrification, and the development of machinery to flow lines, and the storage of raw material and products in the factory being connected to the shop floor automatically, and then everything, even the transportation of goods between the factories and supermarkets and what have you, being done automatically. You have examples of these, and we can do it. What sort of a society that we're talking about? It's a communist society. What people call information society, global village, and whatever is actually a communist society where everything should be owned communally. If things are not owned communally, you cannot use them for communal purposes. That's what the problem we're having at the moment, because the gentlemen own all that money, all those factory, all those fields, all those guns, armaments, and what have you, and they want to keep owning it and make maximum profit out of it. And as a result of it, we're having all these wars. We're having slave labor in Africa, where the most important minerals that we all need for our computers and for our telephone is produced by African children through slave labor. This is the state we are in. To put an end to it, as demanded by the productive capacity we have at the moment, with all these developments, we must communize all the productive, we must communally own everything and start planning everything as technology of production demands of us. In the good old days when Bolsheviks made their revolution in Soviet Union, they came up with a plan of electrification, and Lenin came up with a definition of communism, which was communism equals electrification of the country plus proletarian dictatorship. With the computerization, we have to further progress this. The definition stays, but we must add computerization to it, which also contains electrification. Therefore, communism is computerization of the country plus proletarian dictatorship. And we must make revolutions to put this formula into practice. And every communist party that is worthy of its salt should really put this definition at the forefront for all the worker comrades to realize that that's where we are, and it's their job to communalize all property through revolutionary activity. Now, this revolutionary activity can be election within the elections, which is considered to be reforms and whatever by some people, but not true. You can win the elections under the given conditions and just communalize all the property. Working communists could do this. If the gentleman capitalists don't like it and do naughty things, that's another matter. But our aim should be to win the elections and communalize all the property and start planning the production as computerization of production process requires. There is a when the workers assume political power, computers provide them with the means to control all the products and consumption, and also have instantaneous referendum on all subject matter thanks to computerization. And this scaremongers who talks about state watching everybody, which if you don't have communism is what you have. At the moment, state is watching everybody. I mean, all this has been recorded somewhere by somebody. But if the worker communists assume power, the state would be watched by everybody, so that it does its job properly until it disappears and goes into the dustbin. Okay, I'm finished.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Shen. Now we're moving on to our Q&A part. Left comes Stalin. Are there any questions so far?
Yes, again from I'm Living in the Rain.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the concerns over the unemployment crisis being caused by automation in general?
Yeah. And another comment was talking about the universal income as well, I suppose. Well, yes, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem, and that's a huge problem for capitalism. They are coming up with all sorts of solutions. One of the solutions which I know of from 1980s, beginning of 1980s, there was a little brochure which I somehow did not manage to obtain, written by a professor in England, a professor in one of the universities. And he basically said, do not dare use computers because it will lead to full automation and it will lead to huge unemployment. Even if the competition forces you, don't do it. So that's one of the things. I mean, look at Al Gore. He's talking about superhighway, which is optical lines everywhere. At the moment, even now, after how many years? 35 years, 25 years, we still don't have it. The Japanese had their full automated factory at the end of 1980s. But look around, we have full automated car making. Ford said that they could have it, but we don't have it. So that's one of the things they are doing. They are delaying full automation as much as they can. But how can they do it these days? If you look at the interrelationship of big powers these days, we're going through a huge change. When Trump talks of America first and talks of transferring all the production back to America, the only way you can do it is by full automation. Otherwise, it will be competitive as against the cheap labor of Vietnamese and Turks or Chinese. So he would have to have full automation. But if he does full automation, what happens to all those workers if we do not reduce the working hour hugely? I've just watched a program lately in RT whereby a gentleman asks that we provide leisure time for everybody, thereby reduced working time. for everybody. Will they do it? It's something they have to discuss and decide to do it. Universal income is one of the solutions they are talking about, whereby they will provide enough money for everybody to live on. If you're unemployed, you're unemployed. Tough luck. They think they can manage the society in this fashion. I don't know. I mean, if they succeed in their programs with full automation, in inverted commas, and a universal income for everybody, whereby they don't work, people do not work, it will be really bad for working class. But I don't see them succeeding in there. And they've got other plans. I got my doubts they will succeed. I think they are going towards bigger and bigger wars. I think that's the real solution to their problems, which is again temporary solution. At the end of the day, we shall have to resolve this problem. They can't do it.
Okay, many thanks. That were all questions. Well, that was the only question, so we can go on.
It seems like somebody's
There's some
writing
more.
another question.
There's some more as well. So
What's that, Crasher?
there's some others from Living that haven't been answered yet.
Oh, then please ask them.
All right, I'll start from the top. What do you think of the internet as a means? What do you think of the internet as a means of organizing the movement of communists? This isn't written down properly.
It must be done, comrade. I mean, if you look at Karl Marx in his Communist Manifesto, he's so pleased that the railways are in England, and because through the railways, workers are able to contact one another and organize nationally. And now with the internet, we can organize internationally. Of course, we must do it.
Okay, question 2 and final question. What are your thoughts on universal basic income, which many Western politicians have promoted as a band-aid to the potential crisis that would be caused by automation?
Which I have little bit talked about that, if you remember, about unemployment. It's one of the plans. It's one of the plans they are discussing. I've read a number of articles on it. They are still discussing. As you know, they tried it in Finland, and they came to the conclusion that it's not much use to drive people to work. So they have to decide if they can do it. Well, let's them try it. But if they are going to have lots of unemployed people and they are all on universal income so that they rot without a job, that's absolutely reactionary, and we must expose the fact that it's a reactionary move.
Okay, and finally, one from Chan Kaya. What were the material causes for revisionism?
He said about revisionism. Let's the revisionism
for the end.
At the very end.
Okay. Okay, we'll do.
Okay.
Revisionism? Material base of revisionism.
Well, let's talk about it at the end after we're done with the automation, because I feel like the revisionism will open an even bigger topic and even bigger discussion.
Good call.
So, are there any other questions regarding this book so far? Seeing as none, let's continue to the next part.
But the next part of the book is about the superhighway, which we don't really need to talk about. It's basically an exposure of the fact that Mr. Blair and Mr. Tebbit was a conservative gentleman, and Mr. Blair was in opposition and trying to prepare him for power at the time. And they began talking about this free superhighway for everybody. We still don't have it. Take note of it. We still don't have it. But they were going the BT was going to connect every household through this optical fiber, and they were going to provide free internet to every school and what have you, which didn't happen, as you know.
So that means that we have reached the very end of the book, correct?
Yep.